doing? I've done this before. I did this last week. Why am I brain farting? Who's
What's a
controlling my
fart?
brain? I'm just a bundle of nerves inside of a hollow shell. Anyway, let's talk about League of Legends.
Okay, I'm digging. I like League. It's a good
Welcome,
game.
welcome to League Talk episode 2. Third-rate League Talk, by the way. We're not professionals.
Definitely not.
Yeah,
Especially if you listen to the previous episode.
right. I wouldn't qualify Loco as a professional either, because he doesn't seem to ever know what he's talking about. Sorry, I just wanted to rag on him because seems what literally everybody else does anyway.
Yeah, why not?
Right. Even Thorin seems to know more about League of Legends than an ex-pro.
Yeah, you would think that he would kind of keep current with his own game.
He thinks
I guess
TSM is
not.
good, so
Well, I think, once you're exposed to the TSM virus, it's all you can ever think about.
yeah, true.
Thank God I was never a TSM fan.
Same. Always been a Cloud9 fan, probably will always be a
Well,
Cloud9 fan.
you were lucky in that regard. Every team I picked died.
That's true. You picked Immortals too, didn't you?
Yeah,
I'm
I
pretty
liked
sure.
Gravity too, and they did a
Hmm.
bad move.
Rip. So you probably went from like Dignitas to Gravity to Immortals to
I actually wasn't on the Dig hype train. I do remember watching some of their games, but
really?
not being a fan.
I've always
I
liked
didn't actually select a team until like Gravity, I think it was.
I've always liked Dominate because toxic reasons. I always liked the personalities on Dig when they were a thing, but now Dig is coming back. We could finally talk about that because I think it's happening right after the end of this split, right?
Yeah, I think it's at like the announcement. Well, the announcement's already been made for coming into 20. Sure, is that 2020? Oof.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
Yeah,
time.
we're old.
But yeah, coming into 2020 in the spring, that they're going to be Dig. I mean, that already, like, I don't know. Did I send you that message on Facebook that their like celebration chant is Dig already?
Yep.
And they're still.
Yep.
Yeah. That was. I thought that was a bit early, but hey, embrace change, I guess.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the players have to, like they don't want to be caught with their pants down and like go into interviews and be like, we're Dig, so they better start now, kind of thing. That's the way they just don't flub it up in the future. But speaking of new teams, we have playoffs coming up. Where
Playoffs. Let's talk about playoffs. I'm trying to talk about practice. You
are
don't know
we?
that meme?
No,
No.
sorry.
Yeah, Dick Vermeil's. Dick Vermeil's pretty funny, and so is God. He's the coach at ASU now. What's his name? Herm Edwards? Yeah, Herm Edwards.
Did you just say Dick for meals?
Dick Vermeil.
Okay.
Dick Vermeil. That's pretty funny.
I literally thought you were saying some dude's username that's
No,
in
yeah,
the
that's his
pro
name.
scene.
That's that dude's name. He was like an old coach from like the
Okay.
80s.
10 out
I
of
think
10
he coached
name.
like the Chiefs or something.
Anyway, let's talk predictions. Let's talk playoffs.
Let's. Do you want to? How do you want to do this? Do we just want to go with our top six? Do we want to go with how it's going to shake out?
Yep. I want to hear your top 6 teams in order and why you think. Let's start like count the countdown from 6th to 1st and kind of rank them how you think it's going to happen.
Well, that's unfortunate because I didn't actually prepare it that way. I have a couple tiebreakers, and I'm not really sure how the tiebreakers are going to go.
Okay, well hit me with it.
So I'll give you the 7 teams that will have an opportunity to go into the playoffs.
Okay.
I do have a tiebreaker for first place between CLG and TL. So I have CLG going 2-0 that week and TL going 1-1.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll play a tiebreaker for first, since I think they take the tiebreakers in with the head-to-head, and they both are 1-1. Well, obviously it's head-to-head, but they're 1-1 head-to-head. So I think that results in a tiebreaker game. I'd have to look up the actual rules. TSM and C9 don't change. I have them both going 1-1 this week.
Mm-hmm.
Because how can TSM not beat Flag?
I mean,
Or is it Fox, rather?
have you seen
How can they
them?
not beat Echo Fox? So they're pretty bad, but they're not that bad. They would have to go 0-2 and lose a tiebreaker to not make playoffs.
Right.
So it's pretty unlikely that that's going to happen. Then I have a 3-way tie for 5th. Or 4th? 5th. 5th, yes. 5th. GGS. Where is it? Who's the other 5th member? Hello? Clutch Gaming. And my boys 100T. I got them with the Spirit Bomb. I have a good feeling that they're going to go 2-0 this week, even though one of the games is an upset.
Right.
And Optic is going to go 2 in Fallout, because they have 2 really hard matches, and I don't think that they're going to step up to the plate.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the 7 teams I have vying for playoff contention. And if I was, gun pointed to the head, I would say that 100 Thieves lose their tiebreaker game and don't make playoffs, which would make me a very sad panda.
Gotcha.
And I think that CLG beat Team Liquid for first place.
Really?
That would be my spicy boy prediction.
Yeah, that is quite spicy. How do they win against the Stone Cold Steve Austin TL team? I made that
The
up.
same way they beat him last time.
Well, I believe we covered this in the last episode.
Destroy Smithy and make sure he doesn't gank bot, and you beat Team Liquid.
Yeah, that beating bot part is probably harder in the playoff than it is.
Well, no. This is just coming into the playoffs. I'm not saying at the end of the playoffs.
Gotcha.
So they would have first seed coming in.
Do you have any finals predictions while we're at
Nope,
it?
not yet.
Okay.
I'm definitely going to wait on the playoff predictions until I've had a chance for these predictions to shake out. Then I can see some of these tiebreaker matches, how the patch is going to affect, et cetera, because I don't know if they're going to play on 15 or not. So
Okay. Well,
I imagine that they're not, because they mentioned that they didn't want too much patch shakeup for the playoffs. So I think the patch will be 9-14.
right.
And then I might have a spicy boy prediction.
I'm still upset that the Pike skin isn't out yet. Can I have it, please, Riot? Take my
Is
money.
it... What team is it?
It's the Robits one.
He's a robot. Project?
Yeah, Project. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. It's a really cool skin.
I guess that's a robot skin. It's more like a mech hybrid Deus Ex kind of thing.
Yeah. Alright, so I got my predictions for playoffs. I think it's going to be TSM as the caboose, pulling it in the rear because they suck. And then I think it's going to be 100T, I think Golden Guardians, CLG, C9, and TL. Those are the boys. And I've ranked them by who I think will actually perform in the playoffs. So I have TL at first, and then I have C9 at second, and then I have CLG at third.
Yeah, I just had them coming into the playoffs.
Right.
I didn't really try to push it forward just because I didn't feel that was fair. Because what if I'm completely wrong about my predictions, and then I push forward a playoff power level prediction, and those dudes aren't even there.
Right. Well, we can change them in the upcoming episodes, kind of
Exactly.
readjust.
That's why I was like, let me just go with who's going to get in or who's going to have a shot at getting in with tiebreakers, etc.
But I'm going for the one shot, one kill prediction here. Okay.
Yeah. So you're opening yourself up to all kinds of criticism, Flame, and I can't believe you said this nonsense. But yeah, go for
I'm into it. Personally, I got TL in first. I don't think that they're playing 100%, so I don't necessarily think that they're ever not going to be first place until there's some major shift within NA. And then I have C9 coming in second. I think they are better than CLG. I think that Reaper is doing his classico experimental moves right now, and then come finals it'll be C9 TL. And then CLG in third place. And then I have Golden Guardians and 100T kind of fourth, fifth place. We'll see how that plays out. And then I have TSM placing sixth overall. I don't think they get better. I don't think they have a roster that can improve, which is just sad. So, the big boy TSM team I have at sixth. And if things persist with those teams, I still have them at six. If FlyQuest makes it in somehow, they just sleep with the director of the LCS and they make it to playoffs, then TSM is still sixth. I don't care. They're just. Not only do I want them to be a sixth place team so that they can self-destruct and then rebuild, I think that they actually are a sixth place team. So
Yeah, I see TSM getting into the playoffs and getting eliminated in the first round.
Yep.
Personally, against any of the teams they face.
Yep.
Literally any of the ones that could qualify. Optic, GGS, Clutch, 100 Thieves.
Yep.
And then depending on the playoff push, right? Like if CLG actually gets first or second, then C9 might be their opponent and they'll just get hard smashed. Right. So that's kind of like my thing is I do see the one thing I will push forward is I don't think TSM makes it out of the first round again. Twice in as many years. So I think that what you mentioned could definitely cause some changes, but just not changes that will have a lasting impact on the organization. Like we've already discussed what they need to do to kind of turn the page, so to speak, and like reinvent themselves.
Which you could totally watch in episode 1, selfless plug. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that sentiment, and we did talk about it in episode 1 for what it's worth. And I have something that isn't necessarily on the agenda that I wrote down, but
bring it in. Coming in hot, super hot.
For sure. But I forgot, so
oh, well, maybe when we talk about some of the other things, we can just be like,
right.
Remember that thing I just mentioned?
Yeah, the TSM point carried on a little too long, and I was trying to hold on to it, and now it's out of my brain. So,
Rip.
Lol. All right.
Maybe you should write it down on a notepad.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Maybe.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, I'm not.
Too organized for 5U, you know.
Right. Alright, so let's get into the next topic, which is the state of the ADC role right now. As League of Legends as a whole, not just esports, so we're talking low elo games, high elo games, and pro play. What do you think currently of the ADC role and kind of the power dynamic of having to be played around to do literally anything?
Yeah, I feel like there's only two sets of picks that really work. You can either play for yourself, like a self-peeling, I can do it on my own ADC, or you're playing a lane bully. And that's pretty much it. And I have to play one of those two styles so that you can either hard carry just because you're the far superior laner, you get enough gold, and therefore you have the items to necessarily not be peeled for because anybody that comes after you, you're just going to kill.
Mm-hmm.
Or you need to be playing the Ezreals and that ilk, which is gross. Like, if I see that in my lane, I just want to cry because nobody is good enough to carry late with those champions.
Right.
But I feel like those are the only two styles you can play. Like, you can't play the utility marksmans, you can't play, the attack speed, the on hits. I don't think any of those really are viable in the lower brackets just because of the amount of teamwork that it does take. But in the other lanes, you don't necessarily need teamwork to pop off. In this role, you definitely do in the lower brackets.
Yeah. Speaking from where I am in gold right now, I have a really big problem with positioning because it doesn't seem like no matter how I position, it's a good play. And what I mean by that is, let's say they're at Baron and I have to walk to the Baron. I don't feel like there is any positioning that I'm safe in where my team goes into the Baron, blows their CC, and then it just takes one of their solo laners to jump on me and I'm just automatically dead. Uh, I don't feel like it's a healthy thing for the role to be that dependable on your team, especially since all of these solo carries are so strong. So let's say they have an Aatrox and a Victor. I was playing a Vayne game the other day, and it was a rough laning phase, whatever. I was behind, and then that exact scenario happened where my team goes into the Baron pit and Victor comes around the wall, so he wasn't in the Baron pit. He literally one-shot me with QER, and I died without being able to flash heal or tumble away. And in that moment I was kind of like, huh, that's so surreal that he was able to do that and nobody can play around me for that. Because they're all in the Baron pit fighting their own fight.
Right.
So I guess my point being...
And that's, like, super difficult because, typically when you're approaching Baron from a losing position, you don't have the vision to support the ADC feeling like he's in a safe zone. You're probably going to have one path illuminated, and if that AD is not with everybody, like, within about, I'd say about 150 or 200 units of whoever's going to be doing the peeling for them, then they're going to get popped.
Right.
Because the enemy team's going to have vision of that area, typically speaking, because they're ahead and they're baiting you to come to the Baron. So, especially like the pick you mentioned, Vayne. For one, I would never pick that in our elo just because of
right.
There's not enough for you to do. I don't know how much you guys currently practice. I don't know if this is a solo queue game or a team game, but you don't have the synergy built up between the support at this point for you to play a champion like that.
Right, it was a solo
to play
queue.
like a Varus or like a Vayne or a Kog'Maw or something like that. Those champions that are basically immobile and they just pump out a ton of DPS.
Right.
So,
but that's my problem with the role, is that I feel like you because the game is so much more balanced now than it used to be, but the ADC role, I feel like everything should be viable, and everything generally is viable, except certain ADCs. You could play Vayne top, but you can't play it ADC. Because you're at that level and item disadvantage if you are laning with a support, and then everybody else in the solo lanes are so much farther ahead of you that you're just kind of this squishy baby that everybody has to sit on top of. And I just...
Heal for me, wow!
Yeah, that's literally me every solo queue game that I play ADC. I played this Jhin game recently where I was the only one popping off, and my team doesn't peel for me. They all just try to dive the back line, and this like 25-5 Wukong would just tower dive me over and over and over and over. And I'm like, there's a certain point where I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous that A, my team can't recognize that this is happening, and B, that this is happening.
I think A is the biggest problem because it leads to B. So they don't understand that their win conditions at that particular moment. It should always be do whatever the Fed person wants to do. In any of your solo queue games, whoever that Fed person is, you follow and protect that Fed person. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's, a Viger support or a Kane jungle, whoever's fed and whoever's killing everybody, that's who you work with. So in this particular instance, it's the Jhin. So you need to work with the Jhin. There should be like a 50-foot electrical fence set up around this mobile motherfucker that nobody can get through, right?
Right.
So they have to play that way, but they don't. They're just like, oh, see enemy, run to face.
Yeah.
You can't team fight like that. And that's what I think the biggest problem with solo queue is that people can't understand what their victory conditions are for the current game state and what it should be for the composition at load in.
Right.
Like where they should put their resources in. And then if that fails, what it will be at the current moment. How are we going to win this game?
Right. I feel like a lot of people have lost the importance of the ADC role ever since the patch where ADCs weren't as relevant and people were playing like Yasuo, Swain bot lanes and stuff like that. I feel like people have just forgotten that playing around an ADC is a viable way to win the game.
Yeah.
And it's so weird that shift happened so suddenly and for such a short time, but it's stuck around. I just feel like people were so fast to pick up the new bot lane styles and then just drop the old one and then never touch it again. Because people used to play like in the Ardent Sensor meta, everybody used to just jack off the ADC. That was the name of the game, is your ADC is king and you're all loyal subjects to the king, and I don't want it to be either which way. I just wish that more ADCs were viable in the bot lane when you want to play them. And I mean, it's the same thing, like, you may not be able to discern your win condition in the beginning of the game, but getting tower dove by a solo lane TP and you can't do anything about it as the ADC is kind of just like, what's the point in playing ADC right now if that's gonna be the case,
The same thing that you just talked about is the same reason why people will get killed by somebody and then say, "Oh my God, he's fed." You should have known that before he killed you. Right. You need to be constantly checking the state of the game, and if you're unfamiliar with how to do this, you hit the tab button. It will bring up a lovely screen where it will tell you all about the champions involved, how many kills, deaths, and assists they have, the items they're building, and how much CS that individual has, achieved over the course of the game. And you should be checking this at least once a minute, if not more.
Well,
so that's, it's all the same problem, is that, awareness of what's actually occurring in the game is costing the role its effectiveness in the game.
Right.
So that's the main problem. I don't think that it's an actual balancing like you alluded to. I think that all these champions are fine and they can be played because we see it in the pro level. We see definite teams that will, maybe they'll play the high econ laner, or they'll play like the crit marksman, or they'll play the utility marksman, or they'll just play like some Gragas Yasuo on the bot lane. They'll do something, right? So I think the role in itself, in isolation, is fine, but once you move from tier to tier to tier up the ladder, there's differing things that you can play and get away with, and the vast majority I think it's only those two types, like I mentioned in the beginning. Otherwise, it's going to be unsuccessful because it will require, X amount of team play or X amount of items to be achieved. And since, that tier can't actually farm efficiently or, get resources fed to them efficiently, they won't be able to hit the breakpoints that they need for that pick to work.
Right. It's rather unfortunate that that is the case, but I feel like there is some kind of power disparity between viable ADCs and non-viable ADCs. So maybe it's a combination of both. And game awareness or not, the hidden potential of a AD carry is that you play around them, they should be able to pop off because that is their role. I don't ever feel like it should ever be the case that playing around your ADC is the bad thing unless it's just player skill.
Right.
But
like you don't want to play around me as an ADC. Not a good idea.
right. I'll play around you as Shen. That's what feels good.
Yeah, well,
But
tank initiator. That's kind of my jam.
alright. One of my biggest problems with the game is tanks in League of Legends. And I'd like to bring that question to the forefront of what would League of Legends look like if tanks would tank instead of deal damage. And what I mean by this is obviously that you will see tanks dealing more damage than mid lane and ADC carries because they are allowed to jump onto the team with their AoE abilities and not die, but also deal health bars worth of damage. So what would the game look like if these people had those AoE CCs and stuff, but it just didn't do damage?
All right. Well, I wrote down a couple of ideas of what I thought this would look like and how it might affect, all the different tiers and how it might affect viewership and all these kinds of things. So I think that the game immediately jumps to 35 minutes minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just going to have longer games. And the reason I say that is if there's less damage being done in team fights overall, there's less people dying. And at this stage in the game, we still see team fights where everybody blows literally everything and there's 10 blinking health bars and everyone runs away.
Right.
So you're going to get a longer team fights, more rotations, more CDs, So you're going to see less assassins, which I think is okay, and less assassins and burst champions because people are just going to be living longer. So there's going to be less opportunity for them to flex their muscles. So you're going to see a lot more ARAM as a result, I think. And I don't think that's really good for any of the tiers involved, whether it's, average player, skilled player, masterful player, pro player. I don't think resulting into a front-to-back team fighting as the meta, because that's what I think would result into. Is if the tank can't match up against in the side lane, if he can't trade effectively and do some kinds of damage, then eventually there won't you'll just be 5v5ing in the mid lane, I think.
Right.
And I think the biggest problem is that the tank items, the 1100 to 1300 gold items, they're just not as good as the rest of the classes of items. If you get what's a 1200 gold tank item? The Bramble Vest. Bramble Vest is not as good as a BF Sword. It's not as good as, the Hex Tech Revolver. It's not as good as a Chapter. All these items just aren't as good. So you're seeing tanks index into more damage-based items and not tanky items because they're just getting more bang for their buck.
Right.
So those are all my thoughts about that situation. They're all haphazardly strewn about.
Right.
But that's what I think.
I definitely think that items is probably the biggest key here, in that champions will have very good basic stats for tanks, and then they just build damage items, or at least hybrid items, and it
Right.
allows them to deal more damage than they're probably intended to do. I would like to see more incentive for actual tanking, not just, you know, I'm Scion, but I have full lethality kind of thing. Uh, I would like to see a resurgence of tank items or something like that. I don't know. I would like to see more actual tanks in League of Legends. Maokai used to be really big when he was the beefiest guy in the game, and he had that AoE ult and everything like that. And then, you know, back when Gragas was a tank, back when Zac was a tank, and now all these champions are just bruisers essentially. There is no like real, like, even Dr. Mundo, he's actually quite a bit squishy in this meta, but he has an ultimate that allows him to sustain, so he's considered a tank. It's all of this stuff that's kind of like, these aren't real tanks, they're just high health and base stat bruisers. But I would like to see kind of a reformation of that whole class, because, like I said about the ADCs, it's hard to position in this meta with a regular ADC who can't peel for themselves when you have a Mundo that can just literally walk through the whole team and Q you twice and you're dead. So, I don't know. I would like to see some kind of incentive to be tanky and deal less damage, even if that does mean that the games are extended a little bit, and maybe people don't find it as entertaining in the viewership. I would. I miss the days of, there's a Nasus in pro play, and he as soon as he reaches a certain amount of stacks, that game is over. Instead of just, yeah, Nasus now slows 90% and is a viable pick because his early game is better, you know. I miss, like, kind of the old tact of League of Legends, the old game knowledge that you used to have in order to play the game, rather than just, oh, this is what people are building now and I can deal damage. Cool. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I mentioned to you the other day that I feel the only lever they can realistically pull is to remove scaling on tanks. So, like, every ability will have a base damage,
Mm.
and then they have this scaling. And for whatever reason, they like to give tanks 60% scaling or more.
Yeah.
Because they're assuming that they're going to have, like in some of these builds, they'll get like a small amount of AD or AP to help out with that extra damage or extra shielding or whatever the case may be. But instead, they're just like, oh, I have 60%, I'm just going to go full AP, and I'm just going to one-shot people. Because 60% scaling is pretty significant. Like, especially in an AP build where you can get 500 AP relatively easily. Well, 60% of that, like 270, 280, you're adding that on top of the base. Now your Q is hitting for 850 damage, and you're like, wait, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
I'm a tank.
Exactly, and it's kind of crazy to see the progression of this, because we've been playing since the beginning, pretty much, right? Both of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but there used to be a time where off-meta was a marketable YouTube experience, where it was like full AP Zac, and it was like this thing that people don't do, and it was inventive, and it was fun, but it wasn't viable.
Right, exactly.
It wasn't something people could do every game and win. It was kind of just like a situational, like, oh, I could go full AP here and maybe pop off. And it used to be this YouTube spectacle of, like, I remember, I think Night Blue was one of the proponents of that genre. And it's just crazy to see that progression to where now it's just a thing, you know. Now that's not off meta. That is super meta to just build a tank with full damage stats and watch the scaling of their abilities and spells take over the game. So I agree with you. I think having the what the hell? All right, Google. I didn't tell you to tell me that, but thanks.
Very informative.
Yeah, sometimes Google be like that though.
Yeah, I thought Alexa was notorious for interrupting us, but apparently Google is trying to take over that.
Right. Well, aside from that interruption, yeah. So the the progression of damage dealing tanks has been, I feel like, easily monitorable. That's a word. And I feel like Riot's done nothing to curb it, even though it's been like a slow progression. Like it was easy to see it turn into what it is.
I think they're just look like from a viewership standpoint, which is like the main way to monetize an esport, aside from like sponsorships and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Your viewer count is everything because that leads to advertisement revenue. So I think that for that healthy state is what they're looking for, is like big damage numbers. Like, think about when anybody plays a game and they see like this massive crit, they're like, whoa, 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 right? So that's kind of what they're looking for. They're looking for the WoW experience, and I think you may be in a small minority that front to back team fight with superior tanks and tank play is a spectacle to watch. I don't know this for certain, obviously, but I think it's just a small minority that wants the game to be played that way. I kind of miss playing the game that way because that's my expertise, is tank play. So I would like to see that come back, but from a viewership point, I can see that it might lead to a decline in numbers. As when the games, remember like the Rotato Potato meta?
Right.
The viewership fell off. Some people just stopped watching League altogether and haven't come back. So I think they're probably apprehensive to do that, even if it would be healthy for the game overall.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely think the viewership would take a hit if what I'm saying were implemented, but as a player of the game, I feel like it would be better. I think, yes, the esports would definitely lose viewership, but I think the game as a whole would increase longevity if that play style were viable, because it would open up other play styles as well and ultimately enrich the game. But right now you just have face rolly team fight stuff, and I don't know. I guess it's just me being an older League of Legends player. I miss the olden days where Maokai didn't have electrocute and full AP. That's all.
Yeah. I was thinking about this idea of like, because obviously team fights last longer, and I was like, dude, Silas would be 100% pick ban again. Because if team fights are lasting longer, he's getting off more ultimate steals, and ultimates are the things that usually decide team fights.
Right.
So if he's able to steal 2 to 3 ultimates in a single fight, even right now he's able to steal 2.
Right.
And the fights end pretty quickly. So now you elongate that fight by another 5 to 10 seconds, he gets another ultimate steal off.
But
I think that's the only champion that can be like really fun to watch in this meta.
I'm totally about that. Well, no, it's not the case though. Like, we have plenty of carry champions that would thrive and be fun to see in this meta. Vayne is one of those champions. It's always awesome to see pro Vayne play. Like, it's one of the best ADCs mechanically and game design wise, as well as any of the other percent health champions, or like the old guardy ADCs like Kog'Maw. You have more items in the mid lane that help you deal damage to tanks now. Like, it's such a good meta, I think, to reintroduce tanks because of the itemization and damage that's currently in the game. I don't think it would get sour. I think you would lose viewership just based on game times, but I don't feel like the experience would be any less. And I might be in the minority, I don't know. But I feel like when you watch a tank, like, at the front line, soaking up every which combo that comes his way and then escaping with like 5 health is like one of the most satisfying things to see as a tank player. And
The core JJ special,
yeah,
basically.
the core JJ special, the old Impact special, like it's it's that style of gameplay of like, yeah, okay, you win early game, sure, but I'm a huge tank and you'll never kill me. Like, I don't know, it's fun to watch for me because that also opens up different drafts and different play styles. So I'm not saying that that tank should be busted or like having the health item should be the most viable, but just implementing a way for it to be viable so that way there's more options in the game than just I'm a tank.
Incentivized for damage.
Right.
Yeah.
That way the things that I'm talking about are viable, like Vayne, Kog'Maw. I believe Zed to be a pretty good tank killer. Like, all of these champions that were played back in the day would be viable again. I would really like to see that. But I won't, because Riot hates me.
Riot hates everyone.
Right. They only like double lift, confirmed. And Tyler won.
Remember when they were like, this guy's the worst for our community, and they're like, oh wait, he's actually the best.
Yeah. Oh wait, he has a personality? Oh shit, we fucked up. Here, have money. Yeah, I remember that too.
He was actually pretty decent at the All-Star event too.
Yeah, he's
And
always...
I'm not a huge Tyler One fan.
Neither
but
am
I thought what he brought to the cast was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think they really realized it when he did his Tyler version of the LCS.
The TCS,
Yeah,
or whatever you called it.
That's always been the best because of the really bad production quality. I love it so much. TCS
It's so fresh.
will always be better than the LCS. Hot take.
That's pretty hot.
Right. Alright. I believe that wraps up our third-rate league talk. So, I will be providing time codes in the description, as well as links to other platforms that you can listen to the podcast on, as well as some other info that you can check out. And yeah, I love you. Good
Still
night. I gotta come up with like
an outro?
a sign off. Yeah.